All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to trace the absolutely incredible journey of Nigeria. We'll be traveling all the way from ancient, highly organized central states right up to the modern digital powerhouse we see today. We often think of nations purely as they exist right now, with their modern borders and current constitutions. But the story of how millions of diverse people actually come together under a single, unified identity, it's a fascinating, multi-layered puzzle. So, let's piece it together.
Our roadmap for this journey is actually the Spring 2026 syllabus for Nigerian peoples and culture. This was expertly crafted by Mrs. Yemisi Folashade Fashakin over at Skyline University in Nigeria. And honestly, far from being just a dry textbook, this course material gives us a brilliant, structured lens. It lets us view not just the deep historical foundations of Nigerian culture, but the very real civic responsibilities and socio-political shifts defining the country right now. It's really an incredible framework for understanding how a nation builds itself from the ground up.
To make sense of this vast history, we're going to break it down into 5 key sections. First, roots of a nation. Second, the Kanem-Borno Empire. Third, becoming a Nigerian citizen. Fourth, civic rights and duties. And finally, modern socio-political shifts.
Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, Roots of a Nation, looking at the foundations of pre-colonial organization.
Long before anyone drew modern borders, early state formation in this region was just an incredibly complex feat of engineering. It relied heavily on centralized states, which were governed by powerful leaders, like the Sarki among the Hausa, the Mai in Kanem, or the Ata in Igala. Think about the sheer logistics here for a second. These large political units somehow managed to bring incredibly diverse, scattered groups of people under single, central governments across vast territories. It wasn't just drawing lines on a map. This was the earliest, most vital form of nation building. They literally took scattered, localized settlements and transformed them into highly organized, functioning societies with complex economies.
Moving right along to Section 2, let's look at a prime example, the Kanem-Borno Empire, a real study in ancient statecraft. To see this ancient statecraft in action, just look at the evolution of Kanem-Borno. As Lake Chad gradually dried up, it didn't just alter the landscape, it created massive opportunities. That newly exposed land drew in desert-dwelling groups like the Zagawa. They capitalized on the rich prospects for farming and hunting, essentially welding various tribes together in the process. By the 8th century, Arab geographers were already taking note of its growing importance. And as the centuries rolled on, a highly structured, complex administration emerged, heavily shaped by Islamic law. This ultimately charted the entire region's political destiny for generations.
Now consider this astounding fact. The Safawi dynasty is recognized as one of the longest-ruling dynasties in the history of any state, literally anywhere in the world. They didn't just hold on to power for a few decades, they dominated the political and cultural life of the region for centuries, lasting all the way until 1846. How on earth do you maintain a nation for that long? Well, through a masterclass in governance. They combined centralized political control with immense economic prosperity from the trans-Saharan trade routes. Plus, they used strategic diplomacy, like intermarriage, to seamlessly integrate radically different ethnic groups.
If you want to look at the absolute micro-details of successful nation-building, we have to talk about the 32-year reign of Idris al-Loma from 1571 to 1603. The man was a true visionary disruptor of his time. He didn't just maintain the empire, he completely revolutionized it. He actually brought in Turkish military experts to modernize his army's tactics. He standardized governance by formally instituting Islamic law across his vast domains. He even mandated sweeping architectural innovations, like requiring the use of bricks instead of mud blocks for building mosques. This level of highly organized administration fostered a massive economic boom. It proves that relentless internal innovation is what truly drives national prosperity.
But, no empire is invincible. Just like modern nations, Kanem-Borno eventually struggled to hold its vast territories together. The state began to fracture from the inside out due to a dangerous reliance on ambitious military overlords who simply grew way too powerful. When you combine those internal power struggles with massive revolts in distant provinces, external security threats from Fulani jihadists and Tuareg attackers, and a devastating famine under Mai Haji Ali, well, you have the exact recipe for the collapse of even the most remarkably stable dynasty. Let's fast forward a bit to Section 3, Becoming a Nigerian Citizen, and what we call the modern social contract.
So today, the modern constitution specifically defines who belongs to the state through 3 distinct legal pathways. The most common is citizenship by birth, applying to anyone with indigenous parents or grandparents. Then there's citizenship by registration, which is frequently a pathway for foreign women married to Nigerian men, provided they demonstrate good character. And finally, citizenship by naturalization. This is a formalized route for foreigners who have put down real roots, lived in Nigeria legally for a set time, and actively contributed to the nation's development. These aren't just dry legal definitions. They are the modern mechanism for defining exactly who makes up the diverse fabric of the nation today.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 4, Civic Rights and Duties, the two-way street of democracy. You can think of these civic responsibilities as the modern equivalent of those societal bonds that held ancient empires like Kanem Borno together. Democracy is very much a two-way street. For a modern state to function, citizens absolutely cannot be passive. This means actively paying taxes to fund vital public services, obeying the laws that maintain our social order, and respecting national symbols that forge a shared unity. But perhaps most crucially, it requires active participation in elections. These aren't just bureaucratic chores, right? They are the vital duties that directly promote peace, stability, and ongoing national development from the ground up.
And in exchange for carrying out those duties, the modern Nigerian state guarantees a robust set of fundamental protections. It's a reciprocal deal. The Constitution actively protects citizens from unlawful treatment, explicitly guaranteeing the right to life, personal liberty, and human dignity. But it goes much further than that. It ensures that individuals have the freedom to express themselves, to move freely across the country without restriction, to practice their chosen religion, and to pursue an education. These constitutional rights are absolutely the bedrock of personal development and individual freedom.
Finally, let's zoom out for Section 5, Modern Socio-Political Shifts, as we navigate the current horizon. Since the crucial return to democratic rule back in 1999, Nigeria has witnessed incredible strides. The governance landscape firmly shifted to a multi-party system with regular elections, sparking a massive surge in political participation, especially driven by energized youth and women. Economically, young Nigerians are at the helm of explosive innovation. We are seeing a rapid, globally recognized expansion of the digital economy and fintech startups that are literally changing how people bank. And this vibrant growth sits right alongside vital government initiatives to push beyond the traditional oil and gas sector, diversifying revenue by investing heavily in agriculture and manufacturing.
Of course, all this rapid modernization brings us to the double-edged sword of globalization. Impartially evaluating the source material, we see a really complex push and pull on Nigerian culture. On one hand, you have undeniable, incredible benefits: instant access to global knowledge, massive technological leaps, and rich international cultural exchanges. But simultaneously, there are profound negative effects to navigate. There's a noticeable decline in the daily use of indigenous languages, the heavy influence of Western culture, and the slow erosion of deeply held traditional values. It is a highly complex balancing act for any rapidly developing nation trying to look forward while still honoring its past.
And echoing those distant revolts and structural fractures that once brought down the ancient Kanem Borno Empire, modern Nigeria faces its own profound challenges. Deep-seated issues like corruption, ethnic and religious friction, electoral practice, and widespread poverty continuously test the strength of the nation's institutions. These aren't just political talking points. They are serious, tangible hurdles that can severely weaken national unity and grind democratic development to a halt if they are left unchecked.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. We've traced the incredible journey of how ancient empires are built from the ground up, how they inevitably fall, and how a modern constitution attempts to bind millions of diverse people together today. Knowing all of this history, ask yourself, how can the daily, active fulfillment of civic duties by the modern citizen help overcome today's steepest hurdles and ultimately build a more unified, resilient, and prosperous Nigeria for tomorrow? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the Nigerian experience.